Hello everybody, and welcome back to another Kings of War tournament report. I'm Visibly Riley, and today we have round 3 of Clash of Storms, which pitted my Ratkin versus the forces of the Abyss in the scenario Take and Hold. So here we see again, oh no, this is actually the exact list of my opponent, because I still have the printed copy he gave me. So starting off, we have 2 troops of gargoyles, one of whom have the Flying Hammer, the other one the Warbow. Then we have 2 regiments of Succubi, one with Banner of the Griffin, and one with Brew of Strength. Then we have a horde of Tortured Souls with Brew of Haste, a regiment of Horsemen with Caterpillar, a troop of Hellhounds with Brew of Courage, 2 Harbingers, one with the Lute and one with Boomstick, the Lord of Lies himself, and an Archfiend of the Abyss with Wings, Lightning Bolt, and Fenulian Amulet, and lastly, a Cronius. I actually like my opponent's list here. It's pretty different. It's not too different from how I like to run Abyssals, but it is slightly different. I don't tend to run that many Harbingers. I haven't run the Lord of Lies in a long time, but this game definitely gave me pause to rethink that. And I don't like giving my Gargoyles anything, ever, for any reason. But otherwise, pretty similar to what I like about it. Yeah, I just think it's solid. So moving forward, here we see, after turn 1, yeah, by this point, oof. I was quite a few beers in, so these pictures might be coming fast and loose, but we can see some of the objective points here. The center objective for Take and Hold is right in front of my slaves on the left there, and the far right corner, 3 inches from each of the table edges, is one of the objectives, the one I placed on my opponent's half, and the one he placed on my half, I believe, is right under the shock troops to the right, the right shock troops. So going back to deployment, first I have on the left a regiment of Vermintide, followed by 6 of the regiments of slaves in front of both of the shock troops with the Blight in the middle. I believe my Warlock was actually between the Blight and the shock troops just to give him a little bit extra range, but after this movement he ends up behind the shock troops. Then I have my Demon Spawn flying up behind. I think he was actually deployed behind that little rock that you see at the bottom right hand corner of the screen. I was just hiding from his lightning bolt there. So, yep. And then I have all 3 of my Scurriers with the Assassin in the middle moving towards, or moving up the right hand side, followed by 2 regiments of slaves. My opponent's deployment has some gargoyles off on the far left. You can see part of them over there. The Sophie model he's running there behind his rock is the Archfiend. Then to the right of them, the Tortured Souls. That little, what is that? Cyclops model. Oh, sorry, brain fart. That Cyclops model he has right there, that is his Cronius. To the right of that are the 2 regiments of Succubi. The one on my right hand side is the one with the Banner of the Griffin. The other has the Brew of Strength. Then we have his Hellhounds, followed by the Lord of Lies, the Cav with Caterpillar, the Caterpillar guys. Then on the right here we have his first Harbinger. I think the other Harbinger is behind the Succubi somewhere. And the right Harbinger behind that wall was accompanied with a troop of gargoyles, but all of my Scurrier shooting went into that turn 1. Yeah, just because I had put that objective over there knowing that Abyssals have a hard time doing either A, staying in one spot, or B, actually running the breadth of the table. So I just placed that over there. It was pretty hard for my opponent to get to it, and I removed his 1 scoring unit that was already there. So feel good about that. Otherwise, my advance is pretty standard. I just run the slaves forward, everything else moves behind them about an inch, and yeah, I move my Demon Spawn out behind the rock here. I think he's just getting ready to lightning bolt anything he can. Otherwise it's just not that big of a deal to me. But let's move forward. So this is the turn 1 die, I guess, after I moved. Yeah, this shows a bit of a better picture. I have my weapon team below there in the wood. I think it actually deployed slightly behind, or over by where the Warlock was originally. And my idea here is that I want to be able to shoot it as gargoyles when they inevitably come around that flank. So I don't really care if the weapon team lives. It's sort of a crapshoot of, do I kill them in one go now that gargoyles are only an 8-10, or do I die? So we'll find out. And here we see the end of my opponent's turn 1. He's moved most of his units forward, but not close enough to get charged by rats. Just close enough to get shot, so like the Cronius is close enough to get charged by slaves because it shot at slaves. But otherwise, everyone else just sort of stays back a little bit. His succubi move forward so they could take a charge, but with Ensnare, my slaves are hitting on 6s, so that's probably not going to happen. The Tortured Souls roll around that rock just to get a good flank going, along with Sophie, who I'm a little confused with the placement. It must be something to do with his movement, because I would have angled more towards the center of the field. I think my opponent wanted to fire the lightning bolt this turn, so he couldn't move in a way where he both went to my left and angled towards the center. Otherwise, the gargoyles that are off screen now just fly around to the left, bugging my weapon team. With his shooting, I know he fires the Cronius and I think even the Lord of Lies, but the Cronius shoots into my slaves, doing 9-ish wounds, and then on the right-hand side, he charged his cav into my Scurriers just to get them into that fight earlier. His small pit and shooting from the Harbinger, I think it fired at some Scurriers, but he's at 5s to hit at the minimum, so yeah, I don't think that lands. And unfortunately, Sophie, who fires her lightning bolt into my uninspired weapon team, misses all of her shots except for one, and then fails to wound that shot. So some unfortunate rolls there, but you know, I guess you needed fortunate ones, so not that bad. And move on to turn 2. Turn 2, I roll my weapon team up to shoot the slightly off-screen gargoyles that are over there. Otherwise, I charge with some slaves, some into the Cronius, and 2 into the succubi just to bog them down a little bit. I'm not too worried about this. I know that a Cronius, you can't disorder it, but I just wanted to slap a few wounds onto it with my slaves and stop him from being able to advance forward. The slave unit that took 9 wounds, unfortunately, they were a 14-16, and my opponent only managed to waver them. So they roll back a little bit, it looks like. Otherwise, everything moves forward. I charge with some slaves into his horsemen using some very, very interesting geometry, just by moving around my Scurriers and showing that I could fit these perfect little lines. Just nimble troops that are speed 6 are very maneuverable, often more so than we would think. But yeah, that's about it. I did make one major mistake here, and let's see if you can spot it before we go to my opponent's turn. Here we see the end of my turn, where on the right, it might look like the horsemen are also dead. They're not, trust me. I think that this picture just is a little slid down. But my slaves that charged into the succubi do a wound, and the slaves that charged into the Cronius, I think, do a wound. But obviously that's, I don't roll the boxcars on the succubi, and I couldn't get the Cronius, so we just stare at each other. The unfortunate thing here is my weapon team, when it fired along with my warlock with its lightning bolt into his gargoyles on the left there, I only managed to get a waver there, and then I think, they're regen 3+, so, getting a waver on gargoyles is just not that great, as they'll get most of those wounds back, and it's harder to do it every turn, especially with my weapon team just staring down the barrel of a Greater Demon's gun there. And here is my opponent's turn 2. Sophie charges into my weapon team on the bottom left there. But the mistake I made was when I measured my blight to see if we roll a picture back. When I measured to see if my blight could be charged by those tortured souls, I forgot that they had +1 speed, and I'm about 21 and some change away, and yeah, he gets that easy flank charge into my blight, which is very unfortunate, not where you want tortured souls to be. Otherwise, he sends the Hellhounds into some slaves. They are hindered for charging through the water, I believe, but they are fighting slaves. Otherwise, he splits up his succubi, charges 1 and 1 there, and I think the Cronius is just getting ready to shoot some slaves with his gun. Speaking of that, on the right-hand side, now you can see that I had a flank with some slaves on those horsemen. That was what all the clever geometry was about. And he's probably going to blow right through them and face back towards the slaves. And lastly, the Lord of Lies, I guess herself in this case, decides to go into the side of my slaves here. That's a risky maneuver, but one that should pan out on average, right? That's 10 attacks on a 3+, and then 2+ without Vicious. I don't think the Lord of Lies has Vicious, but it's a pretty decent gambit that my opponent takes here. But we'll see how that goes. Here is the end of combats for his Succubi. Yeah, they easily decimate those slaves. His Cronius only does 4 wounds to the slaves on the left there with his gun, which is some pretty poor rolling. I think the Cronius, for the first 2 turns, only hit with like 8-ish shots or something. He was not doing great. And here we see the end of combat entirely. So yeah, Sophie walks right through my weapon team, stares at my Warlock. Then we go up. The Cronius fails to get rid of my slaves. The Succubi get rid of theirs, though. And lastly, his tortured souls do, it looks like, 14 wounds to my blight, which is pretty nuts. It's not that unlikely, as they don't get the ensnare to the side. So that's 36 attacks on a 4+. He gets, like 15-ish wounds. So this is 1 below average. But the big thing is that he doesn't pop me. So yeah, feeling good about that blight. It's not the most likely thing that he gets the pop here, but it definitely could have happened. It's not, we're not looking for a 10. In this case, we're looking for, it looks like I've got the rally tube from the demon spawn, so they're -23. So looking for that 7 twice. Not that unlikely, but he doesn't get it, which is great for the rats. The dogs also bounce off my slaves. That's just humorous. But the big thing that happens here is the Lord of Lies only does 1 wound to the slave she was fighting and fails to get the panic there. So yeah, that's pretty bad. That's a flank charge from either shock troops or a demon spawn. And she also has some snares, so yeah, losing that bonus this turn. Turn 3 rolls around. And the cab, yeah, they walked right through my slaves. So turn 3, I decide to charge. This is actually in the aftermath. I charge some, if we roll 2 pictures back, I charge the blight into his hounds, I believe, and along with maybe with my shock troops. The shock troops at the bottom left there that are facing Sophie, I move my slaves out of my way or combo charge. I combo charge, yeah, into the side of the tortured souls, and that's probably bad news bears for them. I send my Vermintide forward just to bug some people. Sorry about rolling between these 2 pictures, but I forgot to take one of my turn. So, yeah, I just roll the Vermintide forward, and then, yeah, I get that flank charge with the Demon Spawn into the Lord of Lies here, and roll right through her. I mean, that's 26 attacks on 3s, that wound on a 2. Yeah, she's still a 15-20, which is pretty good, but I roll pretty well on the break check here, and just pop her in one go. So yeah, unfortunate for my opponent. Otherwise, I send all the slaves into his cav, just because I can. But, I mean, it's what slaves do. They get in the way, and I just try to chip some damage when I can. I also sent an assassin into them, just to, again, get some chip damage going. But, yeah, I have no strong belief on his abilities to actually contribute too much to that combat. Otherwise, my scurriers move around. The ones that are on the objective, I don't think have any targets. This was turn 3, and it's the start of scoring, so I needed to be there. And then I move my scurriers that you can sort of see just peeking out of the top right there, right below his phone. I move them forward to shoot at his Harbinger, because in the next turn I plan to just start running them over to that far objective to get it. Unfortunately, he had wavered me in the previous turn, I believe, with the one shot, the firebolt from his little guy there. So I'm running a turn behind here. I had planned to, by this turn, be actually on that objective to score the 3 points, but I did not manage to do it. So at the end of Ratkin turn 3, I control the center objective and the right objective with scurriers and with shock troops respectively, and that scores me 2 points. So it's currently 2-0. This is Abyssal's turn 3. So Abyssal's turn 3 sees Sophie roll forward. He double charges into my into my blight with his succubi. Or not into my blight, sorry, into the shock troops with his succubi. He is facing down the other shock troops to the right there, but that's a pretty, I mean, that's 60 attacks, 30 of which have crushing 1, so bad news for shock troops. His Cronius moves to my right a little bit to get out of the charge arc of my slaves. In the previous turn, I had charged his Cronius, but I forgot to roll it, and at this point, I didn't want to go back. I noticed after I had my opponent had started his turn, but there's no reason to roll back. Who cares? So his Cronius shoots into my slaves on the hill that were already sitting on 9 wounds and blows them away. And his Cav charges into my assassin, and I'm not sure what happens here. We'll see in the next picture whether he kills it or not. We'll see. Sophie fires off some lightning bolt, I believe, into the slaves that had been fighting, that had fought his hellhounds, and doing a wound but not getting anywhere with it. And otherwise we just sit here. Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. The gargoyles here. Yeah, they roll slightly into the woods to get their line of sight, and they shoot at my warlock, doing 1 wound and getting the waiver. So, warlocks. Yeah, he does 6 wounds to my assassin with his Cav, and double ones it, which is very unfortunate for my opponent. It's not where you want to be right now, as those Cav are about to take a flank and rear from many, many things, and this assassin being... Ugh, double ones. Just crazy. Yeah. Bad luck. Yeah, after combat, the succubi, yeah, they blow right through those shock troops and turn to face my other shock troops. And here is the end of Abyssal's turn 3. He is on the center point for 1 point, but on no other point, so it is currently 2-1. Turn 4. So turn 4, obviously my shock troops decide to take this challenge from the succubi, charging them right in the front. Otherwise, my my Vermintide charge into his gargoyles, just showing them who's boss, going for those 6s on a hindered charge, gotta take it. And yeah, the Cav take a rear charge from slaves, a side charge from demon spawn, and a side charge from more slaves. So I don't think the Cav are gonna live much longer. I send my double one assassin into his Harbinger by rolling around. And yeah, I'm sitting on 6 wounds there, but who cares? That'll be a hinder charge. And then on the top right, I send the Scurriers off into the corner. They have to actually run over there to get within 3, so they're just staring at nothing right now. My other Scurriers back up a little bit, so they're still within 3 of that objective in the bottom, on the bottom objective, right to the right of that hill. But they are slightly out of range of Sophie being able to charge them. So that's the plan. At the end of combat, I do a few wounds to his succubi, but not too many. And if I remember correctly, I didn't actually roll that well with my shock troops, but I wasn't expecting to actually pop them. As I'm hitting on 5s, I have no support, so, happens. My demon spawn and his slave cadre, yeah, they blow right through that Cav, cleaning up the right hand flank, along with the assassin who kills off his herald, who had been sitting on 2 or 3 wounds from some Scurrier shooting. So yeah, the entire right side of the field is just rats. The left side of the field has a few rats on it, but a lot of demons. But at the end of Ratkin turn 4, I'm sitting on the right 2 objectives, so it is currently 4-1. Abyssal's turn 4 sees both the succubi charging into another horde of shock troops, probably going to go about the same. The Cronius just sort of moves around. I think he plans to shoot at my warlock. Yes, he does, as he's actually already shot. He's done 6 wounds to it. The gargoyles, who I failed to waver with my Vermintide, decide to not charge and just sort of sit there this turn, I think. And off on the right, Sophie moves forward to get some shots. I believe she shoots into my Scurriers that are on the objective, doing 3 wounds to them, and getting that waiver. So there they sit. There they remain. Yeah, he does 7 damage to my Warlock and rolls another double ones here. So this one wasn't all that relevant to get the double ones, as I can't really, if we roll a picture back, I can't support anything that isn't slaves over here, in the Vermintide, I guess, but those are just fancy slaves. So getting the double one here doesn't do that much, but not getting the kill, I mean, this guy costs 130 points, so very unfortunate. That's double one and double one for my opponent. And here we see the end of Abyssal's turn 4. He is again sitting on the center objective as he killed off my shock troops, although he would still have the unit strength on it. So he is going up to 2 points, and it is currently 4-2. Turn 5. So turn 5, my slaves looks like it might be a rear charge. It's not. They front charge into his succubi, who had turned around to face. The other succubi were protected by his characters and cronies, which I guess I could have rear charged, but I did not. My warlock rolls into the woods, just getting out of, or making sure that he can inspire the slaves if they roll forward, and getting cover against the cronius, I guess. Or, whatever. That's what he does. I send the Vermintide back into his gargoyles as they chose not to charge me. Maybe they were wavered. But otherwise, I just sort of turn around, I get some slaves onto the objective, I back them up with more slaves, and I move some slaves to both protect the demon spawn from being charged by his succubi, and setting the demon spawn up to get flanks or rears if he decides to move poorly. The end of Ratkin turn 5, the Vermintide kill off the last of the gargoyles and turn around. I feel great about that. This is actually the beginning of Abyssal turn 5, but my slaves fail to kill off his succubi, but I do shoot down the other succubi, it looks like, using a combined power of 1 unit of Scurriers and 10 lightning bolts. So, yeah, that's great. Right there in front of his ASB guy. So, yeah, at the end of Ratkin turn 5, I'm sitting on the bottom right objective and the top right objective, and actually contesting. Well, no, he still controls it with the Cronius, but I get 2 more points, so it's currently 6-2. Here we see the start of Abyssal turn 5. So the Cronius moves forward just to get some shots. It has its pick of the litter. I think Sophie decides to charge some slaves now, but I'm not exactly sure. The Succubi countercharge into those slaves with 4 wounds on the hill. Probably not going to go well for slaves. And this is a Warlock shot. Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. Cronius, I guess, was shooting at me. Yes, the Cronius is shooting at some slaves, and puts 14 wounds on them, and double ones them. So this is the 3rd set of real double ones in this game. I have also rolled a double one so far, but not when I actually needed anything but. So my opponent getting up to 3 double ones, just not his day, I guess. And yeah, Sophie did charge into those slaves, did a few wounds, and wavered them, but not enough to kill. So we, at the end of Abyssal's turn 5, he is sitting on the center objective. I actually control the lower right, he's not even contesting it. But he's sitting on that center objective and goes up to 3 points. So it is currently 6-3. And turn 6. So turn 6, I charge some slaves into his ASB. I move forward with everything else except for the Scurriers, who are sitting on that back objective, along with the Assassin, because there's no reason to move. That Assassin's just staying there to have cover, stealth, and individual in case some weird stuff with that ASB happens, and to give Inspiring onto the Scurriers on that far objective, as I don't have time to go reclaim it if he chooses to kill them. My weapon team looks like it's back, but it's actually just a placeholder for my Demon Spawn, who, in moving there, cannot be charged by his Succubi, they're too far away, and is out of line of sight of Sophie, and I've turned to face Sophie. So, yeah, she's kind of between a rock and a hard place here. I'm just protecting that bottom objective as well as I can, which is my plan here. That's all I need to do. The 14 wound slaves go into his ASB, and I think they get a waiver, but we'll see. Yeah, I got a waiver on him. And he decides to just walk away with... No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I did waiver because he has Fury. So he countercharges with the ASB and not with the Succubi. And the Succubi turn to face the Vermintide behind them, as no one else can get to them anyway. Sophie decides to charge into some slaves, I believe, but doesn't manage to do a whole lot. And the Cronius decides to shoot at my Demon Spawn, I think, right now. Just to get rid of my remaining threat, if he can. But at the end of the round, my opponent manages to hit and wound with the 1 ASB attack and kill those slaves, so at least he's got that going for him. But he doesn't manage to control any more objectives than the center one, and gets a 3rd point. And now it is, what is that? 6-3, I want to say? No, I'm sorry, 8-3. Yeah, 8 to 3. So now we have turn 7, because, you know. So turn 7 rolls around. Yeah, Demon Spawn goes into the flank of Sophie, blows her up. I think I also charge some slaves, because why not? And the end of my turn sees... Yeah, I just didn't even bother with the Vermintide. The end of my turn sees Sophie gone, so I control, again, these 2 objectives, and I'm sitting on 10 points, which is an insurmountable lead for my opponent. But he takes his turn, and yeah, he takes his turn. I don't think he even charges the Vermintide because there's no reason to. But he does shoot at some slaves, I want to say, just to get the points with his little... was it Cyclops guy, the Cronius, and I think he gets him, but who knows. But he does get that center objective, so going up to 4 points, and the game ends 10 to 4. So it's a win for the Ratkin, finally, after 2 10-10 ties. I end up getting a win here, and the scenario bonus and attrition bonus puts me on... oh, we actually scored this wrong. I should have 18. It should be an 18 to 3. But we scored it as a 17 to 4, which is fine. So, yeah, finally a win for the Ratkin, and we'll see where that nets us next time. See you then.